Hi, I'm Kumar Shalab, and on behalf of Haq Center for Child Rights, I welcome you all to the webinar today. This webinar is aimed to discuss ways and approaches of rehabilitation of children in conflict with law. For this discussion today, we have with us Dr. Fleur Sovereign and Mr. Ruud Jacobs from Netherlands, Ms. Shivangi Puri from Enfold Proactive Health Trust, and Ms. Sachi Maniar from Ashiana Foundation. Before we begin and start hearing from different panelists, we will screen a short movie which has been sent by Dr. Fleur about the work which they have been carrying out in the Netherlands, aiming and experimenting new ways of rehabilitation of children in conflict with law. So first, let's watch that short video, and we will be hearing more about the work from Dr. Sovereign and Mr. Ruud Jacobs, and then we'll also hear from Shivangi and Sachi about their innovative approaches in Indian context in their work with the children in conflict with law. So it's going to be a very enriching experience, and I hope you all stay throughout this webinar. So let's start the movie first.
Alles laat je hier even, wordt gefouilleerd. We hebben een douche. Hebben we hier een soort van sportruimte. Camera die je in de gaten houdt.
Nee man, alles goed?
De afgelopen 10 jaar zien we dat de jeugdcriminaliteit enorm is teruggelopen. Dat is eigenlijk heel goed nieuws. Tegelijk heeft dat ook tot gevolg gehad dat we allerlei justitiële jeugdinrichtingen hebben moeten sluiten. En dat ook heeft veroorzaakt dat zeg maar, de afstand tussen waar iemand vast komt te zitten als jeugdige en zijn eigen leefomgeving en daar waar zorg en hulp was vormgegeven, dat die afstand eigenlijk veel groter is geworden doordat inrichtingen zijn gesloten. En daarnaast zie je dat de problematiek waar jeugdigen mee te maken hebben, die neemt ook zeg maar, in ernst en in combinatie enorm toe. Nou, en die ontwikkelingen die hebben ertoe geleid dat we in 2015 een grote verkenning hebben gedaan naar hoe het toekomstige plaatje van eigenlijk de justitiële jeugd en de vrijheidsbeneming die daarin wordt vormgegeven, hoe dat plaatje er later uit moet komen te zien.
Je komt binnen, je wordt ontvangen door de huismeester en dan word je hier naar binnen gebracht. De tas, sleutel, gewoon dingen die je niet naar binnen mag nemen, worden hier achtergelaten.
Dit is een vorm van detentie die beoogt om aan te sluiten bij het normale leven van de jongens. Dus wel je contact met je familie en je ondersteunende netwerkpartners behouden. Dus eigenlijk een leven leiden wat zo normaal mogelijk is.
Nou, en dan verder zijn we hier, woonkamer, bank.
De verkenning, invulling, vrijheidsbeneming, justitiële jeugd heeft eigenlijk een aantal proeftuinen nu tot gevolg gehad. En we hebben in 2015, eigenlijk ruim een jaar, hebben wij met 200 direct betrokkenen gesproken over hoe zou het eruit moeten komen te zien. Daar zijn nu verschillende proeftuinen uit naar voren gekomen. En één vorm daarvan zijn de kleinschalige voorzieningen. En die proberen we eigenlijk uit in Amsterdam, Nijmegen en Groningen op dit moment.
Wij kunnen in principe gewoon naar buiten gaan. Hier wordt er gezamenlijk gegeten.
Connecting.
Je wordt niet opgesloten, daar hebben ze bewust voor gekozen om een huiselijke sfeer te creëren. Een hele goede middag, terug van verlof.
Komt u verder.
Dankjewel.
De kleinschalige voorziening is een vorm van deteneren waar natuurlijk wel gekeken gaat worden naar welke mensen er geschikt voor zijn of niet.
Kijk, we zijn allemaal jongens die 9 van de 10 wat hebben gedaan en we zitten hier niet van zweetvoeten. Dus daar moet je wel aan werken, zeg maar, om het in de toekomst buiten na dit traject ook niet meer te laten voorkomen, zeg maar.
We kunnen er niet omheen als jonge mensen ernstige strafbare feiten plegen en waarna uit onderzoek, niet alleen strafrechtelijk, maar vaak ook persoonlijkheidsonderzoek blijkt dat een langdurige behandeling op zijn plaats is of een hele intensieve behandeling op zijn plaats is. Eerst moet iemand dan langer gesloten geplaatst worden. Nou, daar is dan een aparte voorziening voor. Die kleinschalige voorzieningen zorgen ervoor dat de band met de buitenwereld eigenlijk in stand blijft.
Ga jij eerst koken, Gio?
Het was hiervoor altijd zo dat er werden zorgplannen gemaakt en dan betekende het gewoon dat die zorgplannen in één keer verstoord werden doordat er een justitiële maatregel plaatsvond. Nou, dat is natuurlijk ontzettend lastig, frustrerend voor alle medewerkers die daarmee te maken hebben, want je weet niet waar diegene is gebleven en dan hoor je achteraf, oh ja, die is in detentie. Dat is dan maar weer de vraag of dat op die manier had gemoeten. Dus waar we nu mee bezig zijn is die verbinding met elkaar te maken en die planvorming ook op elkaar af te stemmen. Het mooie van die kleinschalige voorziening is natuurlijk dat daar de jongere zelf een eigen plan maakt en zorgt voor een eigen ondersteunend netwerk. Wie heeft hij nodig om zijn plan te verwezenlijken? Hij is eigenaar.
De jongeren moeten zeg maar zelf hun kleding kunnen wassen. Je neemt je wasmand uit je kamer mee naar beneden. Ga je hier je kleding wassen. Droger, alles zit hier.
Het mooie van de kleinschalige voorziening is dat jongeren veel meer eigen verantwoordelijkheid houden. Ze moeten zelf bepalen, ga ik naar school, doe ik daar mijn best, kom ik op tijd terug, hou ik me aan de regels daar. Dus dat is een heel mooi aspect van de kleinschalige voorziening. Daar zijn die jongens vanaf dag 1 van de plaatsing bezig hun leven weer op de rails te krijgen.
Als de jongere binnenkomt, dan vult hij eerst vragenlijsten in. En daar komen bijvoorbeeld de volgende aspecten aan bod. Houding, agressie, gezin, relaties, vrienden en vrije tijd en denkpatronen, gedrag en vaardigheden. Nou ja, dat geeft een volledig beeld als je dit gepresenteerd hebt. En dat laten we terugkomen in een integraal trajectplan zorg. Daarin komen al deze kopjes terug en daar wordt ook in beschreven van wat er nu al is of wat er nu nog niet is en wat er nog moet komen.
Dit is dan mijn kamer in principe op zolder. Ja, zoals je ziet, misschien heb ik hier een laptop, ik heb een tv op mijn kamer. Telefoon ook, maar dat mag in principe, dan moet je individuele afspraken maken wederom. Ja goed, dat heb je op een gegeven moment ook nodig als je school doet of iets in die richting. Wanneer je teruggaat in de maatschappij heb je dat ook allemaal, moet je ook mee leren omgaan.
De kleinschalige voorziening maakt het mogelijk om aan de ene kant te detineren en jonge mensen dus bewust te maken van de fout die ze hebben gemaakt. De maatschappij te laten zien van we treden op tegen deze strafbare feiten. Maar aan de andere kant ze toch zo goed mogelijk, ook met behulp van die beschermende factoren, voor te bereiden op een terugkeer naar de maatschappij.
En wat wij doen is, wij leveren echt zorg op maat. We kijken wat een jongen nodig heeft. En ook welke veiligheidsvoorschriften of maatregelen dat hij nodig heeft. Wij hebben een NIMI-bandje. Een bandje waarbij we jongens buiten kunnen volgen. Dat we kunnen zien welke, of dat ze zich ook daadwerkelijk aan de afspraken houden die ze met ons gemaakt hebben.
In dit systeem kan je dus bekijken waar ik ben. Op dit moment bevind ik me hier, maar goed, als ik buiten ben, dan kunnen ze mij gewoon overal en nergens gaan volgen. En dat is gewoon een extra controlemiddel.
Ze zitten heel dicht in de maatschappij, maar ze hebben ook heel goed de mogelijkheid om dicht bij hun eigen netwerk te blijven, bij hun eigen systeem. Dus ouders kunnen ook heel makkelijk de kinderen bezoeken. De kinderen hebben ook de mogelijkheid om de goede dingen die ze hebben in hun leven, zoals bijvoorbeeld schoolgang of andere dagbesteding, dat kan gewoon doorgaan terwijl ze in de kleinschalige voorziening zitten. Dus ja, in die zin is de kleinschalige voorziening een hele mooie uitbreiding in de mogelijkheden om de maatschappij eigenlijk te beveiligen en jongeren te helpen om op een goede manier in de maatschappij te gaan staan.
Als er bijvoorbeeld iemand voor je op bezoek komt of visite of zo, kan je ze hier ontvangen, want het is niet altijd mogelijk om in de woonkamer te zitten, zeg maar, want je bent hier met andere jongens, zeg maar. En als je moeder komt of je zusjes komen, dan is dat natuurlijk niet echt de plek waar je ze wil ontvangen. Dus.
Eigenlijk zijn er 3 bouwstenen voor die nieuwe invulling vrijheidsbeneming voor jeugdigen. En die 3 bouwstenen die zijn aan de ene kant de kleinschalige voorziening, waar dus nu die 3 proeftuinen voor zijn ingericht. Maar een andere bouwsteen is een landelijk specialistische voorziening, die nou niet overal in het land hoeft te zijn, maar op een paar plekken of op 1 plek, waar specialistische zorg met wel een enorme hoge beveiliging wordt georganiseerd.
Binnen de KV gelden ook regels. Van 10 uur 's avonds tot 7 uur 's morgens gaat je deur op slot, ononderhandelbaar. Je moet ook naar je school, je stage, je werkplek gaan.
Dan hebben we hierboven de kamers van de jongens. Dit is mijn kamer. Hij is echt heel rommelig, mijn kamer, maar ik heb nog niet echt tijd gehad om het op te ruimen. Nou, ik maak muziek, dus ik schrijf hier zeg maar mijn teksten. Ik ga ook naar de studio daarvoor.
In de voorziening werken 7 pedagogische medewerkers en 6 huismeesters. Er werkt een gedragskundige, een jeugdhulpspecialist heet dat hier.
Je moet ermee leren omgaan om zeg maar, je verantwoordelijkheid te nemen van als je weg wil gaan, ga weg. Weet je, het is zo moeilijk is het echt niet. Ik ga bijvoorbeeld morgen moet ik werken, ik kan nooit terugkomen. Maar is dat wat ik wil? Gaat mij dat helpen? Nee, want zodra ik gepakt word, moet ik wel naar een jeugdinrichting. Dus ik denk dat iedereen dat besef hier ook wel heeft. Je stelt jezelf op de proef. Is dat de moeite waard?
Wat ik het mooie vind van de kleinschalige voorziening is dat ik ook als jeugdofficier ga nadenken over waarom moeten jongeren vastzitten en wat is de meerwaarde ervan? Hoe kunnen we ervoor zorgen dat ook een jongen die iets slechts doet, dat het toch beter met hem gaat? Dat we zijn leven weer terug op de rails krijgen.
Het is straf, want je vrijheid wordt je ontnomen, maar het is ook een kans. En de uitnodiging aan de jongeren, en zij waren ook positief, is nadrukkelijk, pak deze kans. En zorg dat je vanuit die levensloopgedachte, dat je dat krijgt wat maakt dat je het niet weer doet. Want dat is eigenlijk de doelstelling van ons beleid, ervoor zorgen dat er niet opnieuw slachtoffers zijn. En dat de samenleving ook trots op jou kan zijn als jeugdige.
Ik heb met elke jongen die hier zit, heb ik wel eens woordenwisseling gehad. Of gewoon dat je denkt van, op dit moment kan ik wel een glas op je hoofd slaan of zo. Maar het zit in je achterhoofd, als je hier vecht, dan is je kans weg, weet je. En dat neem ik dan mee wanneer ik buiten ben, als er weer zo'n scenario komt. Als ik erin kom, kan ik zeggen, weet je wat, doei, ik hoef dat niet. Dus dat heb ik hier wel echt meegekregen.
Many of us are meeting Fleur for the first time. So a brief informal introduction to Fleur is that all of you know that Fleur and Ruud have been part of this initiative. And so Fleur graduated from University of Amsterdam and holds 2 master titles in social psychology and clinical forensic youth care. After completing her education in 2015, she worked as a psychologist, and at the end of 2016, she started her PhD project. The focus of this project lies on the conceptualization of relational security in youth justice facilities and the feasibility and efficacy of small-scale community integrated facilities. Aligned with her PhD, she led an intensive 3-year, that is ranging from 2016 to 2019, as evaluation project of community-based facility in Amsterdam. So we're going to hear more from Fleur on this, and Fleur, the floor is yours. You can start. You will have 15 minutes, Fleur, for your presentation. Thank you.
Hello, well, yes, my name is Fleur. Very great that you all joined us today. I see we are with 89 people, so that's very, very nice. Let me just share the screen and then I will start. We showed the video because we wanted to give you a view of what the facilities actually look like, and I will go into a little bit more detail now of the evaluation that we executed in collaboration with Ruud and all the other stakeholders in the field. And I've done that from an academic workforce here in the Netherlands, which is called Academische Werkplaats Risicojeugd. We're still working on a good English translation of our name, but basically all the research we do is always in collaboration with policymakers and practitioners, and emanates from questions that arise from the field. So just a quick recap of how we ended up with the community integrated facilities, because in the Netherlands we had a need and a desire for change, because we saw a drop in the numbers of youth being arrested and youth intake in juvenile justice facilities. We also saw, because the intake reduced, that throughout the Netherlands, youth justice facilities were closed down, which is in itself a good thing, but it also resulted in that the distance between youth community and youth, the youth justice facilities in which they were incarcerated, increased. And we also saw that the population who remained in these facilities was increasingly diverse and also complex. Can everybody can hear me correct, by the way? And if you have a question, please just raise your hand and let me know if anything is unclear. So in the Netherlands, just to sketch the context, you can be tried as a juvenile from the age of 12 up to 23. And we saw, like I said, a drop in registered crime suspects and an intake in youth justice facilities. And our daily capacity is now about 400. And we were talking a bit before the meeting on, well, discussing the program. And I asked what is important to remember for the Indian context. And I think that's also a big difference, is that the Netherlands is really, really small, and the distances here are really, really small compared to India. So we have a daily capacity of about 400 children in youth justice facilities, ranging between the age of 12 and 23. Also, what we saw is that 80% of our youth are on remand, or pre-trial detention, you may call it. 50% stays less than 1 month. 60% is in there for the first time, and 70% is already known with other institutions. Could be a parole board, could be a care facility. Maybe they already resided in under the protection of the state, but usually they already is known somewhere in the system. So given all these developments and these numbers, our government thought, can we do it differently? So what they did, which showed in the video, they started 3 pilots in Amsterdam, Nijmegen, and Groningen. And Ruud is the director of the one in Amsterdam. And they shared some common principles. They were small. They all had about 8 beds. Local, so close to home. They were in a neighborhood. Focusing on protective factors. So instead of taking a very risk-averse approach, it really, all the facilities focus on how can we build on factors that protect children. And they offer tailored security and care in collaboration with young people themselves and their support network. And they were based on relational security. And I will touch on all these aspects a bit more, talking about our monitor. But before I start, just to give you an idea of what sort of is needed. So these pilots were the result of a larger implementation and exploration phase. And what we saw is that in our evaluation was very important. So before the pilots were implemented, they already started bringing together people from all over the Netherlands, talking about, okay, so what do these children actually need, and how would our system in an ideal situation look like? And they were given enough time to think that through and execute these pilots. It was also with local stakeholders. So instead of the government going very top down, this is what we need to do, it really came from bottom up. So I think that's also something that really helped in convincing our ministers, that all local stakeholders on the ground were already convinced that this was a good way to go. And Ruud was in the middle of this, so he will definitely can talk about that more. And it was in involvement with the community. So what we sometimes see is the not in my backyard a problem, that people are like, well, this is a good idea, but I don't want a facility like this in my backyard. And involving the neighborhood and really bringing them in and being very open to questions and concerns was an important condition for these pilots to succeed. And they were led by a strong project manager, in this case, Ruud. So he can tell you firsthand experience on how he did that. And they were allowed to learn by trial and error. So not from, of course, with this population, you can't, how would you say that? There's always going to be risk. There's always a risk of incidents or mistakes, but they were given time to learn from these mistakes. And there was a lot of trust in the professionals directly involved with these young people. So instead of being very hierarchical, a lot of trust and collaboration was with the people directly working with these kids. And with the people working in these facilities, there was a good emphasis on selection, training and supervision. In a facility in Amsterdam, they meet weekly to discuss every single person and really talk, so what is the right way to go. And finally, that's when we came in, they were all monitored and evaluated, which really helped to build confidence and trust in this movement. So what did we do? Well, we followed from the phases of screening until the period of incarceration and follow-up. And we did that by quantitative analysis, so looking at the numbers, but also qualitative analysis. So we interviewed all stakeholders involved. We interviewed young people, their families, and the unit staff. And we provided a feedback loop, and throughout the whole process of the pilots, we provided feedback on the results, implemented the feedback on that back in the monitor, and the feedback or the results of the monitor were also used to work with practice and policies to refine the processes. So looking at the results, what we saw is the target population of these facilities was both kids on remand and sentenced kids on the last phase of a longer detention sentence. And important in selecting youth, it was, are youth willing and able to comply to the rules and responsibilities that apply to the facility? Which basically means looking at selecting kids that instead of going to a more high security, large scale facility, the important elements were, are youth motivated? Are they ready? Are they open for guidance? And are there protective factors to work with? And it was an integrated integration when it came to all the other factors. So there were not really a lot of very hard contraindication criteria. And when we asked youth themselves what they regarded as kids who should be placed in a more community, small-scale facility, they said it's for boys who are interested, who are motivated to change their lives, who want to learn from their mistake. And if you don't want to cooperate, you should be placed in a high security facility. And I think when it comes to the target population, another important thing that we saw is that it was no indication of net widening. So something that the government was really aware of is that when you create a new and alternative facility, it should actually result in kids who would normally go to a more high security facility being placed there, instead of increasing the net for kids to be placed outside of their home in institutions. The youth placed in the facilities were aged between 13 and 18, with a mean age of 16, mostly violent and or property crimes, and 36% had never been convicted. So it wasn't only first offenders, but also kids with a more extensive criminal record. A lot came from their parents before placement, and mostly in single parent families. And we saw a variety of problems. Some had debt, and there was also, for almost half, substance abuse, cannabis. like I said, it was focused on protective factors and actually continuing or initiating them in a community. So when we talk about community integrated, it means that the facility is actually not offering any internal schooling or internal workforce or internal therapy, but they all use the resources within the communities. So kids, if they are still enrolled in school or they have a job that they are motivated to, they continue to go there while they're incarcerated. And youth said that it really helped them to still feel part of society. And when we monitored, we found that in almost all cases, the facility indeed also actually succeeded to continue or initiate schoolwork or care within the facility, and in that process really collaborate with stakeholders. So I think an important element of this facility, what we saw, is that it really tries to connect with the outside world. So the facilities traditionally in the Netherlands before, they were more closed within their walls and not always working together with case managers outside, but an important element is that the facility was also really easily accessible. And youth gave back to us that it's very good that I can work here. It allows me to really work on myself and I have an exciting job. It stimulates my personal development. And looking at the follow-up, what we saw regarding these protective factors is that about 10 months after release, we saw that 72% still had a structural daytime activity, school or work. 71% was still involved with any care or support structures. 64% still lived with their parents or caregivers. And they were rated as that the informal network was quite involved. Then another element, a tailored and secure care, allowing people to really focus on these protective factors also meant that the facility didn't have a really strong group approach. So they really offered a tailored approach instead of a one-size-fits-all. So they looked at, okay, they didn't have one time kids need to get out of bed, but really focusing on, okay, so what do they need to build a good structure within their lives? And you'd said that because staff are focused on us individually, your development, and it's different in high security institutions. They have more standard sanctions, this or that, and it's more them versus us. Because also when you broke the rules, there weren't any standard sanctions that would automatically be sanctioned. They really looked at, okay, where does this rule breaking behavior come from and what is needed to prevent it in the future? And you said that that created an atmosphere of less staff versus youth. And you'd also gave back to us that a severe incident has not happened here. And why do you think that is? Because everyone is focused on themselves. I don't have the time to focus on other people's business. Then another element, relational security. It was something that was mentioned more and more in policies and practice. And there's not yet a very, when we start, a clear idea of what it actually entails. And I think there's multiple ways of looking at it, but how we conceptualized it was that it means a constructive alliance. So more staff standing beside young people instead of interacting with them on a very authoritative manner. That means also youth and staff interaction is categorized by warmth and love and attention, also with a youth justice population, and really trying to find ways to connect with young people as how they perceive the world and being present in that connection. And then finally also staff being actually present. So a lot of staff were always present. Youth during the day had, for example, a key in which they could open their own room and really walk through the facility freely. But then in securing a facility, staff is present to talk to young people and really signal if they need extra attention to prevent stuff from escalating. And young people also said that small incidents don't escalate because there's always someone there. And also what they told us is that you can see that they truly give you a chance. You can only mess it up yourself. No one else can. They give you a space to show you that you are doing well, but they also give you the space to fuck up. You can easily walk out of the door. It's your decision if you go or not. So something that we heard back is because you're given the space to make mistakes, and also you're given a lot of authority and responsibility, actually made them more aware of that responsibility to take ownership of their own lives instead of just externalizing their problems to the outside world. And also what we heard back is, okay, so you look at it this way. You're sick and I want you to get better. Then I throw you into a room full of sick people. Do you think you will get better? Hell to the no. This is why I believe this works. Here I'm surrounded with positive people, healthy people, and I take something very positive with me when I leave. The stuff inspires me. And I think an important element in this aspect was that in youth and staff interaction, when it comes to relational security, is that staff really need, what we heard back, be aware of their role as a role model and perceive the behavior they want to see. And if you show a collaborative approach and if you show respect, there's a mutual exchange of these values. And I think what we found is that when it comes to security, before these facilities were also mostly talked about being lower secured, but I think, and this is a concept still under research, but you can have high security in walls and locked doors and cameras. But I think this facility showed that you can lower the more harsh and physical security measures, but engage in a high level of relational security that also manage to have youth take the responsibility and comply to the rules. Then finally, through relational security, young people and their network were actively involved. So every time professionals are meet to discuss youth's trajectory and set out their case plan, youth get a seat at the table. So they are present, the parents are present, and the idea is that they really have an active voice and they show participation in the plans that are made. And in the case plan, their voice is also actively formulated. Like Ruth can probably tell a bit more about it, but something that we found and that we got a lot of positive feedback from young people was that in a pilot, they were allowed to add a page to their file telling their story of how they perceive their life and what they think they need to stay on the right track. Also for parents, it was very easily accessible and welcoming. The internal structures of the facility didn't look at all like a traditional youth justice facility, and parents, there are no really strict visiting hours. They call up front and they can come. They're allowed to cook in the facility to really stay connected and participate in an active caregiver role. Staff provided just that it also provides valuable insights into family dynamics and a smoother transition back home. Like I said, a lot of these kids, when they are released, they go back home to their family. But also if they go into an institution of care, the facility and being easily accessible also allows caretakers to really get involved pre-release. So summing up all these elements, and I realize it's a lot of information. So if you have any more questions at the end about anything, you can also always contact us afterwards. But always when I tell this story, it's very positive and it makes you feel, wow, this is such a success. I do have to bring some nuances because I don't think it's a solution for any problem. At the beginning of this presentation, I outlined that there is a strict selection. So they do look at youth who show potential to build on protective factors and who are motivated. So the question is, what kind of model and how these elements that underlie this model could work for a higher risk population. It's also not a quick fix. You need a lot of conditions to be there, starting with a momentum for change. And it's a complex population in a complex context. So I think every day it's still hard work, and with every young people being taken into the facility, you need to look at, okay, what do these kids need? But I think what we can conclude from our evaluation is that you are able, with children in conflict with law, in a youth justice institution, provide them with both a secure and safe and a therapeutic environment. Not all youth need high security measures, even though they are placed and incarcerated in a youth justice facility. And key elements may be applied in other settings. So elements of relational security involving youth's family, even in a more large-scale institution, these elements, I think, can be transferred to these settings. And what we found is with these pilots, there was a wide support, both from local and national governments, the professionals working in the facilities, but most important, youth and their parents. So from these pilots and from this conclusion, the Minister of Justice in the Netherlands announced for national implementation of 5 small-scale facilities, 5 forensic youth centers, so our large-scale high-security facilities are being transformed into forensic centers for young people who need more specialized care, and implementation of relational security within all these facilities. And well, I think this is also a great start, but being able to having the chance to evaluate these pilots in this process so thoroughly, we're really looking at building a global collaboration and a platform to continue sharing these kind of experience and all the knowledge, not only the knowledge that we learn in academia, but also the knowledge that is built in practice in a global collaboration, which we're working on. Well, so that's, I think, my story. I hope it wasn't too much information, but like I said, we can really focus on things that you guys have question on. And I think I will close down the share screen.
Thanks, Fleur. Thanks so much for taking us through how this evolution of this facility has worked out. Of course, I mean, in the chat section while I was going through, there are many questions, but for the sake of continuity of the dialogue and sharing of experience, I would request that I would suggest that we will take the questions at the end, and I'm taking a careful note of all the questions. And now I would request Mr. Ruud Jacobs to come in here, and because he has been there with the facility since the beginning, and he's been managing the system. So it's really good to hear from the person who has been there since the beginning and what and how it has functioned so far. As a formal introduction to Mr. Ruud Jacobs, he is Director of Small Scale Forensic Facility in Amsterdam. He has worked as a manager in different fields of youth care and youth probation. In addition, he has also been working as a professional coach for profit and non-profit organizations since 2002. In 2016, he started as director of the first ever experimental forensic detention center for boys in Amsterdam. So yes, and we have also seen in the video, Ruud was there. So we're going to hear a lot from Ruud now. So Ruud, you have 15 minutes to put on your points. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, thank you for your introduction also. I will start to tell a little bit story about how we started in 2016, because I heard in the story of Fleur that she pointed out to that beginning stage of our facility. And I would also appreciate when there is a question which is important, that you might interfere with my story, because I hope to connect with you more than I send out the story only, because I hope that yeah, that we touch each other in the sense of we go in the same direction. In 2016, we started this facility out of interest of the municipality of Amsterdam. At that moment, what you also heard in the video, there was no detention center anymore. And in Amsterdam, we thought about a new form of innovative detention that would connect better to the community, and also would fit with the ideas that we have at present, and would fit with the boys that were being detented. That started with 50 people who came together and shared all kinds of ideas, which in general were like based on the community, more focused on the individual boy, and also try to connect with the boy. And I think that last subject is something that could be for interest for you, because I think this whole process has more to do with a change of mentality and a change of the approach that we have normally in our head. And most of that is maybe unconscious. So what we did is we tried to put the logic of the boy central in our approach. That means that the things that the boy experiences, feels, or how he analyzes the world, that we try not to have an opinion or an idea about that, but we try to understand that, and we try to connect with that. So to give an example, a boy who has been to court and heard that he has a short detention, he can feel very disappointed, because maybe he hoped that he would be released. If he comes back at the facility and we say, wow, congratulations, because you only have a short period to be detented, then he can be very disappointed. So what we have to do is we try to find out how he experienced his reality, and we should not approach him from our own thoughts. That might be that we thought that he had that he would get a long detention, because then the whole communication is going wrong and we miss each other. Actually, I think that's the whole base of how we work in Amsterdam. We try to be present with the boy, and we try to approach him with his whole life, his whole convictions, his whole situation and where he participates. So we try to connect with him, and through him also with his family, with his school, with all the activities that he normally has. And I think that's a big difference with the traditional prisons. In the traditional prisons, in general, they are more on distance from family and school, for example, or family and work. And in a small-scale facility, the boy can go to his own work. He can go to his own family, if we had made appointments about it. So they keep on living their own lives. The difference is that we support him in that, and we keep control if he can carry these responsibilities. And what you see is that those boys really show themselves. They appreciate the fact that we give them a responsibility, and that we approach them as a human being, as a boy. And a part of him is in problem because, yeah, he did something that was crossing the border of the law. So people ask us, how does it come that boys are so relaxed at our center? That is, I think, in the base because we approach them as a complete human being and respect the way that they live their lives, except of course when they cross the line of the law. But they know that themselves. We don't have to say, oh, you were a bad boy. They know that there was something going on that's not right. But what we try to do is we find out what is the problem for him. Where does he struggle with? And what is the part that he wants to go for? And in general, the boys have a very clear idea of their future. So what we do is we go, when the boy is coming to us at the facility, the first conversation is, what would you like to do in your life and what is important for you? And we have no moral judgment about that. If he wants to be somebody who works in a supermarket, that's okay. If he wants to be a pilot at KLM, at the flight company, that's also okay. We don't say anything about it, but we try to find out what is the way that you can reach your goal. And that means that the motivation of the boy always is very big. And it all depends on the motivation of the boy himself, I think. We cannot force him to have another motivation. My conviction is that that never works in no situation and with no person at all. And that also is valid for the boys that come to the facility. Then when the boy has expressed his destination and expressed the needs that he has, then we connect with him and we start to work. So directly, if he wants to be this supermarket employee, then he can go to school to learn that immediately. So he goes to school the same day that he arrives with us. We invite his parents at the center to cook or to be social with him. And what we do is we try to mix ourselves into his life so that we can see how his thoughts are, how his behavior is, and maybe with his mom, he behaves completely different than, for example, on school. So many boys, they have problems at school, but at home, parents don't see any problems. That can be very interesting for us, not to have a judgment, but why is that the boy is feeling more safe at home than at school? I think that has a lot to do with his own development and his own feeling about insecurity, and also the position that he takes in society. Because many boys have problems to connect with the society as a whole. It's a very complicated society we live in. It's a lot of information, a lot of expectations, and they have to find out how to behave in that. And sometimes parents don't even know that themselves, how the society works. And what we think is, if we can point them out a little bit more in how to behave, that will make a big difference in the future. So that's about how we approach them in the facility, how it works to organize it, because I think that's for you all a big question maybe. You have to find something in the community where the community has a need for. So in Amsterdam it was the lack of a detention center. And for that, everybody was motivated to find some form to build up this new facility. And I think the success of Amsterdam is the fact that we all worked together. And it's not a facility only for me or for the company, but from the whole community. The court feels as the owner of it. The mayor feels an owner of the facility. Even the neighborhood was introduced very early with the fact that we were starting this facility there. And we go along as normal neighbors. So we ask them for coffee, we talk to them when we are on the street. So when you pass by at the building, you don't see a big difference between the houses in the neighborhood and our building, because we want to fit in society as a normal citizen. We don't want to put an accent on the fact that there is a problem or there is some law problem. No, it's a normal boy, and he goes to school in the morning and he comes back in the afternoon, like the other boys in the neighborhood, and that has a big effect on him. And that makes that he is aware of the fact that he has this responsibility where we have to connect with. And I see time is running, so if there is any big question, I would really appreciate that if that would come through. And if I don't see it, I'll go on with my story. Now, what's happened for the rest in Holland is that what you saw in the video was actually in the beginning stage of our facilities. And the situation now is that this facility is being rolled out through the whole country, and that the Minister of Justice decided to start like 5 of these projects through all the country, and also is closing down traditional juvenile prisons, which I think is a big compliment for the fact that we did our work in Amsterdam and that it worked so well and that we have good results that Fleur talked about and that she did research for. So that was for us like very, very important, because in this research of Fleur, she could point out the facts that worked well and the elements of our facility that were important for society and for the Minister of Justice. So a side of the approach that we developed in Amsterdam, which is very focused on the individual boy and the individual logic of a boy. It's also important to be aware that you have to do it together with the community, and that you have to show the facts that that work, the elements that are scientifically proven as something that could be worthwhile. So that's more or less a short, very short story about the facility in Amsterdam. And I would say I could talk too long, but I don't think that's of any more value. So I would say if there is any big or important question, let me know. And else I would say this is a short image of what the facility in Amsterdam is and what we try to approach.
Thanks a lot, Ruud. I mean, it does sound like a journey back in 2016, how you started, and surely it's a long way you have come across. In Indian context, as you rightly mentioned, it needs a lot of attitude and behavior change practices to make this system a reality. In India also, civil society and those who work on juvenile justice system and child protection system, we have been advocating for this. We have been saying that it is, apart from the legal knowledge, it is the need of the hour, and it certainly calls for attitude and behavior change. In India now, we have some of the committee-based initiatives, but mostly it is for children in need of care and protection. Now I would invite Shivangi Puri. She works with Enfold Proactive Trust, and she holds a master's degree in social work, and she has also a master's degree in social work and specialized in criminology and justice from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Her master's thesis documented the everyday life of women prisoners in the first of women's open prison in Pune. That's a part of that's near Bombay. For the past year, she has been a part of the team at Enfold. It's a Bangalore-based non-profit organization. So for the past year, she has been part of Enfold that works using restorative practices within the juvenile justice system. Her work involves engaging with both children in need of care and protection and children alleged to be in conflict with law in 2 childcare institutions in Bangalore. So we are really looking forward to hear from Shivangi about her experiences of working with children in conflict with law in 2 of the childcare institutions. So Shivangi, floor is yours, and you have 15 minutes.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Shalab, for the introduction, and also Huck for giving the opportunity to speak and share our experiences. Also wanted to really say that it was insightful to hear Flor and Raj speak about an alternative system where there can be small-scale facilities instead of having large-scale detention facilities. Just to give a brief about what Enfold does and the organization that I work for. Enfold has been around since 2001, and the main focus areas of work have been personal safety, sexuality, gender empowerment, and child sexual abuse. And we've recently started working in the past couple of years on restorative practices and in childcare institutions. So our on-ground experience with childcare institutions has been in the last year. And today I'll just be sharing what we have been doing and how our experience has been in the last year. I also wanted to pick up on something that Flor said about punishment, about it being a punishment as well as an opportunity, and I think that's been put very beautifully, and that's how we would like to look at any child that has committed or has allegedly committed an offense, and how that one thing can be turned into an opportunity for them to turn their lives around. Just to give a brief overview, I wouldn't go into too much of depth here, but just to say that the different institutions that are available for children who have been in conflict with the law or who are alleged to be in conflict with the law, there is the observation home, which is while they are pending inquiry. The place of safety includes 6 categories of children, and for this, the special home is where the child goes after he or she has been found to have committed the offense. So just wanted to emphasize here and just say that there are community alternatives even within our juvenile justice system, such as community service, group counseling, probation, sponsorship. You know, they can order the child to go for vocational training as well. However, they remain largely underutilized and can definitely be used more if there were more support structures, governmental or non-governmental, available to utilize these community alternatives. Moving on to what Enfold has been doing in the last year, we started off working in restorative practices a couple of years ago, but in the last year we've done a basic needs assessment of our particular observation home and the place of safety. So basically the observation home and the place of safety in Bangalore is on 2 floors, so it's largely the same institution. So when we did do our needs assessment, we came up with just the framework of how we're going to work, and we came up with protocols and guidelines for our internal team on how we were going to go about our intervention. This was in consultation with people that were already working within the system and knew much more about it than in the present context. So the idea that we had while in 2019, while we were entering the government-run observation home and place of safety, was to create a restorative culture within the home. Basically have a child-friendly community, have a safe space for children and staff, enhance social emotional learning, and to address interpersonal conflicts within the home. We also wanted to work with the Children's Committee and the Management Committee. However, we haven't done that as much in the past year, but we hope to do that if and when our work resumes, in-person work resumes. So coming to the work that we did do in the observation home and the place of safety, we do something called restorative circles where we sit down together, and the basic premise is that we are doing things with them rather than to them. So it's about talking along with them and having a safe space for discussion and expression of feelings, and being able to understand one another and build relationships where everybody can hear each other. So that's the idea, where we sit down, we basically it's a participatory process where there are questions where children answer it and we also answer it. There's a talking piece and everybody has an opportunity to speak as well as pass if that is something they want to do. So the idea, so we've also realized that that we had to work with both the staff as well as the children, because to see a cultural shift, we thought that it was important to also work with the staff, look at you know, like their points of view, how they feel, and coming up with a co-created space. So the idea is not that say I as a facilitator go there and tell them, okay, this is how you're supposed to think, this is how you're supposed to do things. It's about having a collective wisdom, or having people all together sharing their viewpoints, their feelings, and everybody learning from one another. The idea is to have a co-created space, and for staff, we have looked at, you know, discussing. So with the staff, we have a fortnightly engagement. We go there every 2 weeks, and with the children, we have a weekly engagement. So we used to go there every 2 weeks. So with the staff, we talked about topics like working together, self-care, understanding the needs and feelings of young people. Basically, we asked them to think about their own childhood and how they felt when they were young people, and to relate their feelings with what the children might be feeling. We also realized that with the children, it was we did a range of topics like anger, dealing with anger, friendship, understanding emotions, etc. But we realized that while the children do want to talk and they do speak, but there are many other ways in which they do express themselves. And just to give you a few examples of how we've done that is, there was this one circle where we sat down with children to talk about anger, and we actually used a pressure cooker to give an example, like a visual, and we put like feeling words inside the pressure cooker and said, okay, this is how you feel when you're angry, and these are the different feelings. And we ended on a note of asking them to think about different ways in which they can deal with anger. So we actually went around searching some things that some coping mechanisms, and there were things like, okay, you can listen to music, and we realized, you know, the children that we work with can't listen to music because they don't have anything. And we realized that, you know, something like positive self-talk, like giving them statements that they can tell themselves, would be helpful. I remember one of the children later on telling us that, oh, you know, we stand over there and actually look at that whenever we're angry. So that was one thing. We've used a lot of art. Like we ask them to draw how they're feeling, or we ask them to make something with their hands if that is something that interests them. Like the picture on the left is them drawing how they're feeling, and the picture on the right has things that they've made. And some more art. So there's some art that we've used. It's for different purposes. Like the one on the left corner, this was, I'm not sure if everybody can see that, but we'd ask them to draw what they think is the vision of a good life. Like what do they think is a you know, great life, and how can, you know, like what do they think that. So so that's what they've drawn. Yeah, here we also use movies and different modalities just to communicate with them, just to talk to them. We either use the whole movie or a part of the movie so that they can reflect on it. They can talk about the characters, about what they think, you know, like the character should have done instead, etc. So we've used different forms as well. We've also looked at collaborating with other organizations that also work within the home, and recognizing that there may be some sharings within the circle or within the group setting that may not be that we may not be able to address in a group form. So we do try and talk to them after the circle if we realize that they require additional attention or they want to talk to us. That is done. But apart from that, if there is we realize that there is some indication of self-harm or suicidal ideation, we do refer to the mental health practitioners that are within the home, and we've tried to build that relationship with different organizations that have been working. The picture on the right is actually from celebration of New Year's that we did, like all the organizations did do together. So yeah, we got all the staff and the children and a few NGO staff as well to play volleyball with the kids. So that's what the picture is. Just wanted to share the feedback that the children had, and there are a lot of things that they did say. So basically we did like a focus group discussion with the children, and the team members that did this focus group discussion were different from the ones that actually regularly engaged with the children. So I just wanted to speak about two things that the children said, and the rest you can read. The first one was that, you know, when the children were asked, what did you like about the circle? They said that our opinions are respected and valued, and we feel heard and listened to. So I think that was the space that we were trying to create for them, and if that's how they felt, that was great for us. And when they were asked, what did you learn from the circle? One kid said that I should not hurt others, and the other kid said, I realized how it feels when I hurt others. And just to share that these are not things that we've told them outrightly. It's not like I go and say, hey, you know, you shouldn't hurt other people, or hey, you need to control your anger. Like there isn't much of direction. There isn't much of how to do things, rather than a safe space, a safer space for self-reflection and learning from one another. So we also took in some feedback from the staff. This was before the COVID lockdown, and it was telephonic interviews, and again this was taken by team members that are different from the team members that engage with the staff. Just wanted to read out one. Now I understand that children could have committed something because they were in a particular situation. There must have been some reason for their behavior, their actions. I try to find out about their background. I have realized that I should not judge them. So I think we expect that level of heightened sensitivity from the staff, and definitely that shift in attitude was appreciated by us. Coming to the work that we have been doing during the lockdown, we've been doing telephonic check-ins to assess the well-being of the children and residing within the home. However, right now the home does not have any children because all of them have been released. But till the time the children were there, we would do telephonic check-in calls. We did try to do some online work, but there was some, we couldn't actually complete that and do that because there was some resistance from the home as well. But we were able to keep in touch with the children. We also we're also following up with a bunch of children that have been released from the home. Initially it was just asking them, okay, what do you need? Do you need food? Do you need, like, what are your immediate needs? And then also building that relationship and continuing that relationship with them and saying, okay, how are you feeling? Do you need anything? Being there for them emotionally and looking at what different needs they have. We also looked at facilitation of access to justice, basically looking at, so when the children were inside the home, looking at whether the child had a lawyer. If the child did not have a lawyer, if there was a way we could get them a lawyer or file another appeal. So we've done that. We've also facilitated contact with the family in the case where the family was not so willing to come or was unable to come and there was a lot of confusion. So we tried to touch base with the family as well as the child and ask the family to come to the home. Also, yeah, we facilitated provision of rations for the family that have been released. So the group of boys that we've been following up with, if they did express that need, that was provided to them. Part of our team has also been working on guidelines for JGB, for CCIs and JGBs, and engagement with the DWCD, Karnataka. Also wanted to share what we are looking at doing in the future right now. We've been looking at, we've been talking to these boys that have been released and realized that maybe there is something that they need to be engaged in, and also they looked at, so we looked at creating, and this is still underway, we're looking at creating an online certificate course on life skills for children who have been released, like children in conflict with the law. So the basic objectives of this program is to, we're trying to do it online and we're trying to make it as accessible as possible. And the basic objectives of this program are to just understand, basic self-awareness, regulation of emotions, interpersonal relationships as well. So there has been there's been like a buy-in from the department as well. The director of ICPS Karnataka has also appreciated the work, and that we're probably going to that is underway. So this online certificate course is something that we're all looking forward to doing. Last but not the least, I'd just like to share a few challenges that we did undergo during this time. Initially, it was a little difficult to build trust and, some even establish values within the circle. So, I mean, I remember one of the times, like we walked in, and I think our whole team remembers, and we had this box of chocolates and sweets actually, and in 30 seconds it was gone. So we had no idea of what was happening, and like initially we didn't know what was going to happen, and everything. But it took some time, and we got used to that space, and they got used to us, and they realized we're not there to lecture them or tell them what to do. We're just there to hear them out and, you know, sit together and do some activities with them. Another challenge that we faced is that it's a floating population, and on an average, a child stays there for 3 to 5 circles. So that was something that was anticipated. Two things that we have done to overcome this is, one is that we've tried to keep the session as standalone as possible, you know, like as self-sufficient as possible. So even if a child attends 1 or 2 circles, we try and keep it that way. And also, other thing is that the older children that are in the home, of course, tell the newer children, hey, like, you know, this is what they're going to do. They're going to sit in a circle, and, you know, these are what our values. So they do that. Another thing that has been challenging is to responding to difficult unforeseen situations, or situations that we did anticipate but comes out in a different way, either self-harm or suicidal ideation. But there have been, we've also gotten trained on trauma-informed care, and are trying to respond in a way we can, and also to refer them or to find a supportive adult within the home that can be informed about this after the child's consent. So it's also been challenging to navigate the government managed space, and the restriction of physical access and shifts in engagement during the lockdown has of course been challenging. And yeah, with that, I would like to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the experience. Over to you,
Shivangi. Thank you so much. So in the interest of time, I will quickly move to our last speaker, Sachi. She heads Ashiana Foundation, and she's been dedicated to social justice issues from very young age. Now, Sachi drives Ashiana's unwavering commitment to shape holistic solutions that lead to children and youth achieving the potential that they have, that they not only desire, but they also deserve. So she is committed to enabling youth people to change their past and disrupt the system that perpetuates their vulnerability. So Sachi, the floor is yours, and you have 15 minutes so that we can have more time for question and answers. And it's just a request to all the participants. You can also engage with our speakers in the chat section, and you can continue with the questions and answers right here as well. Yeah, over to you, Sachi.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. So firstly, thank you, Haq and Shalab and Bharti Didi for inviting me, and also to Fleur and Sood for just sharing. It's a brilliant model, and I have been inspired ever since I first saw the video. So I'm just really grateful that to get the opportunity to hear your experiences firsthand. So my background is in filmmaking. I'm a filmmaker by profession, and so not a regular social worker. And so everything that I did in the Mumbai observation home with the children was all based on my intuition and my experiences. So I did spend some time learning about restorative justice and seeing models in the US. And so those are the things that, I'm going to probably be sharing about right now. I entered Dongri in 2012 as a part of the, to work with the children in need of care and protection. But in 2016, I had my first encounter with a child in conflict with law. And he shared with me that he wants his photograph in the newspaper as wanted. And that, when he goes out, he wants to kill somebody and become famous. And so that itself was a really shocking thing, because I was like, here's a kid who spent 5 months in the home, and now suddenly, there's no change in his thought, and he's going out exactly the way he came in. And so I've been, the inquiry that I had was, how can we create these institutions as places of transformation? How can we, enable this experience of coming inside the JJ system? Being a victim of the JJ system is there, but how can this become a life-changing event in a youth or in a child's life? So And you know, working in an institution facility. Sorry, I'm not able to move my PPT, but it's only pictures, so it doesn't matter. Sorry, shut up. Okay, I'm just going to continue. Okay. So working in an institution in India is like, you know, creating spaces. And I have a picture which is about this stone wall, and, you know, you see little green grass coming out of it. So it's really like creating spaces for life to grow and thrive in the middle of these stones. And that's my experience of working in Dongri, where, you know, children spend time in the institution not because, you know, there is a treatment plan that's going on, or somebody's counseling them, or, you know, whatever, for those reasons, but they spend time because their cases are going on. So and our visiting psychiatrist, you know, once shared with us that most of the children who come into these facilities face the remand home syndrome, where there is a lack of trust that's created, there is fear, there's insecurity. The children are re-traumatized just by being locked up, and, you know, the experiences that they go through in these facilities is kind of something that will haunt them their entire life. So through our different interventions in the facility, we basically work on, we try to focus on creating safe spaces, creating spaces of reflection, expression, building a new narrative that, you know, the children can carry and carry outside the institution, and also it will support them when they step out and build new memories and move forward. So we first began our work with circles with these young children and youth, and we would normally, like exactly what Shivani explained, you know, Shivangi explained, which is talking about emotions, talking about life, telling your own personal stories. And it always began with a meditation or a visualization, and then ended with a note of gratitude. And slowly that became like the culture of the session, where, you know, the kids knew that, okay, you know, Didi's coming, and so we have to put on the all religion prayer, and we are going to start, you know, sharing about our own life. And this became a space where children knew that they could express their fears, they could, you know, put down their guards and actually listen to each other, and also come up and put, you know, their little wishes that they had. So from there, you know, we got to know that some of the kids wanted to work on their like continue their education. So we started an education program where we connected one volunteer with one child, and then they would come and teach the kids and prepare them for their 10th grade or their 12th grade. And often, you know, we, like, people ask us, okay, how many kids passed? You know, it wasn't about how many children passed. It was more about how many children attempted, because these kids never got a chance to attempt for anything. So this was more about giving them an opportunity to attempt for an exam and go out and do things. And in India, actually, a 10th fail certificate is as important as a 10th pass certificate. So that's, you know, that's something that we did. And also we realized that the key, or the, you know, it's not to look for a formula that will work for all kids. You know, it may not work for all kids, but instead, you know, if you created individualized approach and worked with that, tried to find an opening in a kid, and then figured out what are the next programs that the kid can undertake, that would really enable the shift. So just to give 2 examples of this, we had a 15-year-old boy who was, you know, labeled as one of the most dangerous boys of Dongri. He even he would beat up kids, break doors, he even stabbed a guard. And this is a kid who for the first time was let out to do farming. And he told me that he realized in that first session of farming that when I give respect to others, others give respect to me. And so farming itself was one big, you know, game changer for him. Similarly, we had another kid right now in the facility. He spent over a year inside, and, you know, he's finding his sort of expression through rap music, and we just connected him with another volunteer, and the volunteer is teaching him rap. So that's basically, you know, just trying to find what is it that the kids want and really listen, because children have the answers. Nobody wants to be stuck in this institution forever, and they really are able to tell you where they want to go. So that's one thing that we did. We also organized events which were completely led by the kids. So these were events where kids made decisions on what is the food they will eat, what is the vegetables they will cut, you know, what should be the program event like. And suddenly we put responsibility on them, and because of that, a lot of things came up. Like there were fights that happened, there were interpersonal issues. We saw one kid going and telling another kid, come on, Didi's work so hard, you have to participate. So we saw all these things happen in this, sort of creating these events, program. We also brought a lot of volunteers from outside inside. I myself entered this institution as a volunteer. So we bring in volunteers who can perform for the kids, who can share music, who can teach them music, who facilitate dance workshops and theater workshops, and also a lot of volunteers who have had similar life experiences, who come and share their stories. So we have had ex-inmates of Arthur Road Jail who came and shared stories, or a Mountain who come and share stories. So suddenly the perspective of the children kind of opens up. And then a huge part of our work is, advocating with the staff and helping them see a different aspect of the child, which is beyond their case file, beyond the legalities, beyond the charge sheet. And so when you show that, suddenly, it opens up a lot more possibility for the child in the home. We are also in the process of working out a negative consequences, kind of sheet, which is not necessarily punitive. Right now, in the institution, the law is not equal for everybody. So if a child is if a child has hit somebody, a child A will get a different treatment than child B, who probably has a more rapport or has been in the home for a longer period of time. So we're trying to work with the staff to see, okay, how can we create the experience the same, so that a child doesn't walk away from the institution saying, this is, if you behave in this way, then you get this. So that's not what you want the child to walk away with. Like, the law has to be same for everybody. Apart from that, once these kids, so we are here inside, and mostly we've seen a lot of trust issues that they have. And once we build this trust, when the kids step out, there is a whole new journey of rehabilitation that begins. So they are back in the community, they are back in the family, same stigma, peer pressure for, those at least who are in addiction. So what we work on is, basically once they step out, we continue to work on their mental health, support them with social emotional literacy, help them find jobs, vocational programs, education. So create sort of a roadmap for them and continue to follow up on that roadmap. And the volunteers they met inside sort of become the support system and extended social network for these kids. So suddenly we'll find one volunteer saying, okay, yeah, this boy, he was great at, editing. So let me find him a job in, in this sphere, in event management or in something related to media. So these were some of the things that we did with the volunteers, and once the kids came out. Of course, it's impossible to complete a story for a child without connecting him to his family. So there is a big, there's a lot of effort put in connecting the child with his family and kind of changing the narrative of the family for the kid, and at the same time for changing the narrative of the kid for the family. So that bridging that, gap between the child and the family is a really important piece that changes sort of the future and the growth of the child. I wanted to share a few stories, but one of our boys, when he stepped out of the institution, he first of all, he was really surprised that we continue to follow up with him, because I think these kids don't have people who have been constant in their life and constant positive role models in their life. So that's been one of our big things, which is we show up for the kids even if they make mistakes, they relapse, whatever happens, the idea is to keep showing up. Also, we've seen that the kind of mental health issues these children face once they step out are enormous. And, Bharti Didi was asking about cost. If we talk about cost, that cost itself is a huge, because it's a person cost, and the kind of damage it does to a human being is crazy. So that's one of the things. So this boy who came out of the institution, we got him the first job, and then he couldn't adjust to that job because the employer would keep telling him that, don't do this, don't do that, all of those, like he would keep giving him instructions and he couldn't take instructions. So he quit that job, and then the second job he took, he learned to actually follow instructions. So the journey outside is not just about, not just about getting a job or getting a vocational program or education. It's actually a behavior change journey, which involves changing the way you communicate, taking orders, learning to fit and understand how everybody else works. And also it's a journey about second, third and fourth chances, not just the second chance, because the kids will relapse, the kids will fail, they'll go back into drugs. And the idea is to keep showing them that this is what they said they wanted to do. So, so that's been kind of our experience in, in working with children outside. One other thing that we really focus on is how to create new memories. So a lot of these kids have seen violence in their house. They've seen celebrations in the most violent ways, all of that. So we end up taking these kids on treks, or, celebrating Diwali or celebrating Eid in the most community, it's really beautiful. Like all the volunteers come, children come, they share, what does this festival mean? They share what they want from this festival, those kind of things. And that itself, a lot of kids have come back and told us that I had never celebrated Diwali like that, or I had never been on top of a mountain and I didn't know this was also one way to, get an adrenaline rush. So that's been, like just creating these positive memories which they can hook onto and continue to move this journey in a very, very positive, direction is something that, we enable or support them to create. I think that's more or less what I had. I hope I was not going too fast and I covered most of it. I'm so sorry. Hey, it's here. Can I quickly show the photographs? Shalab? So this is the...
very quickly.
Sure, I have like a quick... Okay, so this is the center. This is the picture I was talking about, in a facility, how literally we are fighting for space for things to grow. The circles, this is the farming project and the kind of joy when you grow things and, you see, and of course, the farming project itself, like I think all our programs have a couple of dimensions, which is emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, and, legal. So like trying to get all of them in the programs. This is the first time the kids performed on a stage. And, for a lot of them, this event was a life-changing event. This is a Teachers' Day celebration. This is Lakshman Goli, who's an ex-inmate of Arthur Road Jail, sharing his story. These are volunteers who come in and, share music and, cut hair and many things. These are our circles outside. Volunteers teaching photography and, education. And this is our Diwali celebration and our treks. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashi. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for rushing you like this. And now I will, let's move to question and answer session, because in the chat section, I can see we have many interesting questions also. And at this juncture, I would like to invite Inakshi Ganguly. She is our co-founder and advisor to Hug Center for Child Rights. She has been there since the beginning, and there is no other better person to steer this discussion in a very constructive manner. So Inakshi, over to you. One announcement, or like one thing I wanted to mention here, that initially we had thought to make this webinar till 5:45. We had some lag initially, so we can stretch our webinar like by 10-15 minutes more, so that we can cover as many questions as possible and we can have more discussion on the issue. So over to you, Inakshi, and the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalab. It's been raining in Delhi, and so Bharti's house has lost electricity, so I'm stepping in for her, because her charge on her computer may run out at any moment. Fleur and Rad and Shivangi and Sachi, it was absolutely fascinating to listen to all of you. And I cannot believe that some of the facilities that I've seen in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, no longer exist. And I always wonder what we must be doing with those big buildings that you had, with all those rooms and facilities. There have been a number of questions and that some of which I've noted, some of which has been shared with me. Shalab, will you please keep helping me? So one of the things that I think everyone is very, very curious about, and you have partially answered it. I think Fleur or Rad, one of you I saw on the chat, has partially answered it. But the question that is, I think, is kind of making all of us wonder is, how do you test that a child is motivated enough? And if a child is not motivated enough, then where does he or she go? Then he or she goes into a regular facility, but you just told us that most of your facilities are shut down. So what then is the treatment, as they say, for a child who does need some kind of treatment, maybe, or some kind of and those who and is not motivated enough to be able to go into the community facility? Fleur or Rad, whoever wishes to take this on.
If I may, I would like to answer your question, because it's a very intriguing question, which I can understand completely. I think measuring the motivation of a boy is actually a very simple thing. You just ask him if what he wants to do in his future, what is his perspective of his life, and what he wants to do to reach that for. And motivation, you can see not only in his answer, but also in his behavior. And he gets the chance to say that he wants to go to the facility, or he can also go to traditional prison when he says, like, oh, I don't care a lot about what you are going to do with me. I do my own thing. That means for us, no motivation. But when a boy says something about feeling uncomfortable with his position at that moment, that means for us, he doesn't want to be there. He wants to change. And that is the measurement of how we measure his motivation. It's actually simple. Just ask him what he wants, and if he wants to be in another position, if he's uncomfortable with it. And until now, most of the boys, they say, yes, bring me to the facility instead of the traditional prison. That depends also on what he did, if it was a very severe thing that he is being suspected of. But the motivation, I think, you should keep it very simple and ask him and look at him and try to see if it's a consistent thing.
So Rad, there was one of your prosecutors mentioned serious offenses. Now, what would you consider serious offenses in your country?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked it to me personally, because what I think is that most of the boys that are being in contact with the criminal law, that they could be helped with the facility. But we make a difference, for example, if it has a lot of impact on society, if there's a lot of publicity, or when it's about murder, things that really cross a border, then we say that's, then we have to use more security measures than the relational security that we use. So you could think about he's being suspected of murder, that kinds of things.
Would sexual crimes come into your serious offenses category?
I think yes. That depends on what he explicitly did, what he is being suspected of. Sexual crimes are being looked at on one big category, and I think there's a lot of difference. If it's something that has really violated the will of the victim, and that was really clear that there was something going on that is not confirming the values of your society, then no, he cannot go to the facility. But when there is something that you can relate with his own sexual development, and that is something that has to do with not knowing, not being uncomfortable with his own behavior, then I think yes, we could help him.
Okay. Flo, do you want to say something on this?
Yeah, so I think Ruud has explained it quite well. What we indeed saw in the interviews is that it's all about the context around the offense. So not simply just looking at the technical offense that they are being charged with, but also the context. And we did see in one facility where youth were placed as a reintegration, so youth that have been sometimes incarcerated for years. We did also see some very, very serious offenses, because obviously they were in there for a long time, but because it was at the end of their sentence, they had already developed a Latin that was used as a reintegration. So I think the essence of the screening is that it's tailored. So every case is looked at individually and as a holistic, not only looking at the offense, but looking at the child completely and the context around it.
So the ones who are not motivated or are very serious offenses go into a different facility?
Yeah, they would go into the forensic centers that are national centers and are in the buildings that you probably visited. So more large scale, more detention-like facilities. But they are transforming them at the moment. So they're going into the trajectory which they started with the facilities in 2016. Now they started an exploration and implementation with all stakeholders to see, okay, how do we need to transform these facilities so they're all more developmentally appropriate and more focused on strengths instead of risks.
Mm-hmm. There was a question about the profile of the staff and the capacity building. So everyone looks like Rod and is like Rod. Is he cloned into every one of the centers? Or, I mean, what is it that motivates people to become, you know, part of the staff, to look after children in conflict with law? I think, Rod, you might want to do that, take that on first. Yeah.
Yes. To look for suitable staff is really a journey that has taken a long time for us to do that, because we didn't look for the traditional type of professionals that work in juvenile prisons. We looked for people who feel and in general had for themselves experienced how it is to be an outsider in society, because I think that's a big problem for the boys and girls, that they feel that they are not going along with society, that they have to do illegal ways to perform themselves. So what we did is we looked for professionals who could relate with the culture of the boy, who could relate with the position of the boy, because only then you can have a good connection with him. You have to understand that understanding is not only rationally, but also in the behavior and how he feels. You have to be capable of scanning the boy within 1 second. When you see somebody and you talk with him, he has to understand you and the other way around. So that was for us the central focus. Thus the professional has the skill to connect with the boy. And for the rest, you have to have diplomas and all that things. But that focus was the most important, because we wanted another change, we wanted another approach. And we can only do that with people who are not being educated in the traditional prisons, in the traditional system. I hope that is a part of the answer of your question, because it's a big question and very essential. I agree with you.
I mean, it is, I mean, I think Sachi, who's a filmmaker, is better suited than many who have the right degrees sometimes. So it's just very hard. It's a very hard position also for the adults. It's not an easy job. And it's also sometimes a thankless job, because, you know, it's a faceless job. You're sitting inside some facility, nobody knows you're there, and yet you are there changing lives of so many children. So it's always been a challenge for us to A, find out who is the right kind of person, and B, how to keep them motivated to go on doing this year after year in a sort of faceless, nameless way, as just a cog in the wheel of the system. And yet the system is so important. There's another question that was there. How was the community prepared? I think you did answer a part of that in your chat, but if you could talk a little bit more, because one of the biggest problems with children in conflict with the law, who have broken the law and are offenders, is stigmatization. So in the Indian context, if I don't know if Punita is around in listening to us, but one of the things that we have noticed is either they take extreme pride in it, like Sachi said, you know, it's a big deal that they, you know, the bigger the criminal, the bigger the crime, the more hero you are, and the masculinity is enhanced by the crime, or they're completely stigmatized. So it's either of the two. So how do you prepare the community to actually hold a facility like that within the community? Either Fleur or Rud, any either of you.
Yeah, maybe we can do it both together, Fleur. Because the community was in the beginning not amused when they heard we would open up this facility. They thought that the burglary would go on and that there would be more crimes in the neighborhood. And we organized some information gatherings with the community, and that didn't help anything. They came in very, they didn't trust us. And we gave a lot of information and they left, and they still didn't trust us because they thought like, oh yeah, you have a nice talk, but once the boys are being placed in your facility, they will start to do the things that we don't like. The only thing that helped is, before we started, we invited 750 post address in the neighborhood to come to our facility, and we let them through the facility, and we show them that it's a homey place, that it's a normal house kind of, and that we were focused on personal interest. And also we organized some coffee gatherings with the neighbors to just come and talk with us. They were afraid of that because they said, oh, we have to prepare a lot of reading and all that. We said, no, we just drink coffee and you can ask us. So with that, we were capable of having a connection and a relationship with them, which is also what we do with the boys. We focus on the relation instead of what is security in terms of cameras and control. But we want to be present with the boy, and that's the same for the neighborhood. We want to be present for the neighborhood. Once that is organized, you can go along together, the neighborhood with us.
Yeah. Yeah, and to add to that, I think a big part was also the involvement of the city council. So the city council really stepped in the local government to allow the neighborhood to have a direct line for complaints. So they really supported the facility in establishing that relationship with the neighborhood, in also reaching out and showing that they would be present if any problems arise.
Shalab, are you there?
Yes, yes.
Should we take some hand raises?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's completely up to you, Inakshi. However you want to.
It's a good idea, because then Fleur and Sachi and Shivangi and Rud can actually hear voices other than mine. So if any one of you could raise.
I can see Charu. Charu has raised her hand.
Charu, can you come in? Would you like to come in? Please keep it very short so that more people can. Don't make long introductory speeches. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Inakshi. First of all, would like to thank everyone for a lovely presentation. My question is to Fleur and Rud, that once a child is in the facility, and has it happened that the child, at the end of the term, the child has expressed his wish that he does not wish to go back to his family and would like to continue in a facility like this, the same facility? If yes, what is the alternative that you have been able to provide for such a child? Because I've come across cases where children have expressed something like this. So I would just like to know your view on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Charu. Rud?
Yes, we have encountered that problem actually quite a lot, although most of the boys, they want to go back to their mom. Let's put it that way, not family, but mom in general. So most of them go back to the family, and that's what we asked for before. But sometimes during the process, the child expresses his wish not to go back because he's unsafe there. And when the system is really complicated and difficult to connect with, then a boy goes to a special kind of guided home in the city. But I must say, in general, those facilities are more focused on a general approach. And what the boys feel safe at in our facility is the individual approach. So what we are doing at the moment, we are having talks with corporations in Amsterdam that want to experiment with individual apartments and guidance connected to it, where the boys could go through. There are facilities now, but personally I think they don't really fit because they go more on a general approach, and I think it's successfuler when the approach is individually made on the boy, and you can easily organize it, is my convincing. And the organizations that we talk with are really open to start such an experiment. So it's a new road that we are working on, and I think it's an interesting one because a short intervention is not enough.
Is there any other person who's raised their hand?
Thank you.
Do you see any raised hands, Shalab?
No.
Nishit, do you want to ask your question, Nishit? You've sent it on recidivism. Is he there?
Yes, but Rud already answered the question in the chat.
Okay.
And thank you, Rud, for that. And also the question on the neighborhood orientation, that was also answered by both of them. Thank you so much for this, Fleur and Rud.
Is there anyone else who wishes to ask?
Yes, Bharti has raised her hand.
Yeah, Bharti, yeah. Bharti, you had 3 questions.
Yeah, I had a few questions. Some of them answered. The one on economics, of course, one understands, but to build a case for advocacy, I don't know if you did any homework where you could, take to the government that, this is what it would cost if you were to invest in small-scale community integrated programs. So that was my question. That was one of my questions. But as I look at it, I'm sure each one of us who's here today has some or the other experience, and Shalab had talked about documenting some experiences. We've heard 2 from the Indian side as well. There are lots of challenges that we mentioned, but I'm sure certain tools have been used, certain methods have been used. Can we as a group today, I'm just putting this forward as a question, can we as a group today decide to take this discussion forward and work towards putting down our experiences, methods, tools together in the near future or in a time-bound manner? So that was my main concern here.
Yeah. Considering that we've had open prisons for such a long time in our country, it's funny that we don't think of open facilities for younger people. We have these big walls with wires and multiple walls and multiple barred windows and those horrible smelly toilets. It's just incredible how we haven't translated what we think for adults into what we think is good for children. There was, Arlene, you had a question about a tracker. Arlene?
Thanks, but I think that also Rud has answered. I personally feel that yes, if all kids in conflict with law, alleged or found to be in conflict with law, had a tracker, they could be out in the community, and the negative impact of institutionalization could be reduced. But the flip side is in terms of their right to privacy is being affected. So for me, it's a huge dilemma. There are benefits on both. I mean, benefits on the side, of course, in terms of having a children out in the community, but the other side, in terms of not just during the period of which they're being tracked, but even after that, the implications on this young person's life, especially in a country like India with what's going on with data, I'm very fearful. So Rud did explain that in Amsterdam, it's not being permitted. So do you mean, Rud, that in other districts or other places in the Netherlands, it is being permitted?
Gladly, I can answer that. Until now, that didn't happen. That was one of the experiment of other small-scale facilities in Nijmegen, but the government decided to go on with our model. So that includes that we don't want to go on with that way of security measurements. We go for the relation, and we give the responsibility to the boy, which is something he also has to practice and learn in the society. So we don't use those watches like you were scared of. I have that same fear. I don't think it's something that you can abuse the privacy of a boy to find more security. I think that has a wrong effect. So in the Netherlands, until now, we don't work with that anymore.
Is there anyone? Yes, somebody?
Oh yeah, sorry, I wanted to add to that. It is possible that youth can get electronic monitoring. It's indeed not connected automatically to the facilities. We sometimes see it when youth are released. I think something to add to what happens in the facilities, that they really, Ruud and the professionals really invest in involving people during the time of incarceration who can provide supervision and structure also after release. So it's not in electronic monitoring, but it is about building this network of security and structure around young people. So case management is also done by people who were involved already or will be involved after. So I think that's also a way, also in times of what do we actually consider security? And I think this is again coming more from a relational security instead of a more physical security standpoint. And we're still looking at how it works, but from this preliminary evidence, I think we can go a long way from building high relational security structures and lowering our more physical security measures.
I think that is really the takeaway from this evening, and is about how do we build relational security as against building securities. Sachi, Bharti had a question for you about how paranoid we are that the children run away from facilities, and that's like the biggest thing that happens in our country, that so many children have run away. So how do you take them for picnics? Or
I think exactly what Fleur said, like just the fact that we have a relationship with them, and we've taken them out twice a year for these dance events and things, farming project and things like that. And each time, literally, we just sit in a circle and say that, if you run away, this is going to be the consequence. This is what it's going to mean for us. This is what it's going to mean for them. And pretty much throughout, all our trips, we've never had anybody run away. So I think just that trust and that, giving the trust to them, even what Ruud said, that putting a chip is easy, and, having a watch or a tracker is easy. But what are we really, what is the message we are giving, that we don't trust you? And so then how do you expect the child to grow in trust? It's not possible. So it's just, what is the value system that we want to encourage?
In fact, they are in the system because there was no trust in them.
Absolutely. I think
they are in the system because nobody cared to trust them. Nobody cared to look at them. Nobody cared to make them feel good about themselves. So they did everything that they did was to validate their existence. And therefore, so if our messaging is also of lack of trust, then I guess so relational security, as she said, is the key. I think with that, thank you very much, all of you, for allowing me to take your questions forward. Shivangi, is there anything that you would like to answer before we finish? Okay. Shalabh, over to you.
Thanks, Anashi. Thanks a lot. And with this, we have anyway stretched half an hour or 15 minutes more. So I would like to thank everybody here, every participant, and all our panelists and guests today for the wonderful presentation, and the discussion was even more enriching. So thank you so much. We will be documenting this, and we'll be putting up the video and audio both on our Facebook and on our website. So please watch out for that. And those who could not join, you can also circulate that video to everybody. So thank you everybody for being with us. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.